Yes, this is a privilege that every citizen has to question the law of the land and to use the procedures of the courts for raising those questions. I've already pointed out that the requirement is a requirement set by the Congress, not set by the Bureau of the Census. It is an act of Congress, and it is, if you will, the due process whereby we organize our society. This law has been on the books for a great many years. There have been several individuals who wanted to test its constitutionality and wanted to find out whether the courts would support the Congress. The answer is there have been tests of this in the courts, and in every case the court has upheld the constitutionality. As I say, it does go back to the Constitution and includes in their test of the constitutionality the rights of the Congress to ask for information over and above just the individual's personal identification by age and sex.
I hit the ground with quite a thud, and it kind of took my senses for a minute. And as I came to, I heard this music playing, and a Mexican music, guarachas. And when my vision cleared, I realized that it wasn't music at all. I was right in the midst of about a half dozen rattlesnakes.
I don't know. I don't believe that.
When I realized that as I tripped over the log, my one foot was up in the air and the laces on my boots, because of the tremble of my body, were spinning in a slow, hypnotic spin, and I had these snakes in a trance.
I don't believe that.
I looked around wondering what to do when I noticed that the biggest snake of the bunch was not coiled like the rest of them. He was just sort of leaning on one elbow, and he had a heck of an expression on his face like he was in pain.
I sure don't believe that.
Well, he crawled around to those other snakes and said something to them, and not speaking snake, I didn't know what he said, but those snakes all just settled right down from their striking position and sort of eased into the grass, and I knew that was time to get the hell out of there.
This guy could be a professional weatherman.
The problem of pollution in the nation's waterways came home today. The North Central Texas area was named by the Texas Water Quality Board as being one of the largest contributors to pollution of the Trinity River. The Trinity River, winding its way through the Dallas-Fort Worth area, receives more than 200 million gallons of what is termed partially treated sewage each day. That pollution is carried in the waters of the Trinity, depositing residue and filth along the way. According to the Water Quality Board, our area is largely to blame for that filth. In Fort Worth, where a good portion of the overall problem exists, city officials are reluctant to discuss the matter. The director of the Fort Worth Water Department, W.H. Hardy, refuses to talk about the plant or the methods of treating sewage. He and city manager Howard McMahon said the city would rather not talk about its sewage treatment problems or its feelings about the State Water Quality Board's statement. The problem apparently centers around the chlorination of treated sewage before it's dumped into the river. Now, under state law, it demands that the water be chlorinated and makes that a prerequisite for obtaining a state permit to dump sewage. A spokesman for the board in Austin told me that some cities feel the chlorination is not necessary, and they've asked the board to delete that provision from the permit application. Whether the chlorination can be in fact omitted from the prerequisite for obtaining the state permit is something to be worked out between the Water Quality Board and the cities involved in the controversy. But water pollution in general, be it in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or across the state, is something most citizens are concerned about. This is Gene Thomas, Channel 8 News in Fort Worth.
I would be less than honest if I did not admit that for the past 30-some years, most black people who have moved into the forefront in the various movements, whether it be economic movements, civil rights movement, social or fraternal movements, have identified themselves because of the long control of the Democratic Party, particularly in the South, like in Texas, and of course at the national level, with the Democratic Party. But today, because more and more black people are becoming as sophisticated as their white brother in evaluating the political spectrum of the nation, more and more, not in the numbers that we would hope, but more and more qualified black people who identify as leadership potential or have leadership potential or have exhibited their communities are seeing the benefit of two-party government and are pitching their hats and their talents in with the Republican Party.
ladies with poke bonnets and calico dresses pick up a palm leaf fan and suddenly become a femme fatale. They try their inscrutable look, you know. It's a funny thing. A fan does something to a woman. You just get all flirty and you become a coquette, you know. Well, I was in a costume shop and picked up the fans, you know. I did everything the girls do, like pose and inscrutable and flirty. And because they were ostrich feathers and soft and wavy, I picked up two and suddenly said, "Ha, that's the way the herons look. This is white birds flying in the moonlight. Wow." And I worked on it. Well, that costumer's name was Maybelle, too, Maybelle Shearer. She loaned me two moth-eaten fans to practice with. The costuming, or the lack thereof, was wholly by accident. I had intended to take the only chiffon nightgown I had, which I was saving for a better purpose, but it hadn't come up to then. I'll be seeing you, and you'll be seeing more of me. Thank you.
Are you glad to be home with Daddy?
Yeah.
You are. I bet you are. You tired, girl?
No.
Did you get some cookies?
Yeah.
You did? What kind of cookies?
The little one.
Alan, I know it's been quite an ordeal for you. How does it feel to have her home?
Give me another cookie.
Yeah, go in there and tell your grandmother to give you one. She'll give you one.
Bye-bye, Tina. Bye-bye. What was the first lead that you had as to the whereabouts? Did you hear it through the FBI or through some other agency? Or?
Well, we sort of knew what happened. We didn't know who. I knew who sent them. I mean, but we didn't know the people that did it. But we worked that out pretty. They did an excellent job. You just can't believe how good them guys are.
Did you know the Jones boy or the other one?
I knew the Jones boy real well.
Did you ever have any problems with him? Or
no, he's a nice guy. I hate to see him get messed up. I do.
Alan, what about this story that was concocted about a $4,000 gambling debt?
The way they finally come up with it, they told Dad so that my ex-wife knew that I'd been in Florida before I came down here visiting one time, and so they said Florida and to throw everything that away, but it just didn't work.
There was no gambling debt?
No, there was no gambling debt. It's just a woman's whim, I guess you'd call it. It sure raised hell with a lot of people's lives.
Alan Gaines, thank you very much.
The flag is too special to desecrate. It is too special to make a pledge to it mandatory. It's a glorious thing for it to be a free pledge, as is the Apostles' Creed, if people say that in church freely. It is a beautiful thing. It becomes very ugly when it's forced. There's no difference in the sound, but it changes from democracy to fascism in that process, and that's dangerous.
I feel sorry for the lady.
Is that all?
No, she's chipping away at the great principles of patriotism. If you allow the school board to say to a child that you can either salute the flag, or you can give the Pledge of Allegiance, or you cannot give it, well, then you're just taking a link out of the chain of what I call patriotism and democracy. And I feel it is chipping away at the basic things that have made this country great. And these people who come up here from the American Civil Liberties Union who advocate it, they're just misguided.
I
because I think the private sector ought to take care of the problem. And the private sector can build them 25 to 35% cheaper. So why should we spend money just because the federal government is doing it? You know, the unions and everybody else charges the government just a little bit more.
Well, why aren't we building more private housing then?
Lack of funds.
And is there any way around that?
Everybody's looking for this solution, and when we find it, why, we will have tapped the source. We don't need any big miracles. We got the ability to produce all the housing that we would need in Dallas County if we could find the financing. But at 8 or 9%, the man doesn't want to pay this. He's waiting for the interest rate to come down.
And do you think it will come down?
I think it has to.
Every college worries about whether its public really understands what its mission is. And a community college's mission is sufficiently different from, say, the mission of SMU or Bishop College that sometimes people confuse our roles. And where we may have a greater emphasis in technical occupational programs than any other college in the area, this is sometimes misunderstood. You see, an awful lot of these people who are going to El Centro might never have gone to college anywhere had it not been for this college.
In the first place, there is a great deal of concern and nervousness, lest there be an intensification of hostilities in the area, such as there was in June of 1967. Frankly, I don't see that in the near future. The neighboring Arab countries are, frankly, militarily impotent to take any action against Israel of an effective nature at all.
Is there any way to control the renegade actions of saboteurs such as the Arabs who Israeli believe have been responsible for the bombing of some planes?
I don't see any means, because if you take the countries from which they operate, they're not really operating from Egypt, because the front lies on the Suez Canal and is manned by conventional military forces. But you take Jordan. In what is left of Jordan, even after the loss of the West Bank, the majority of people in Jordan are Palestinian. Out of a population of a little more than 1 million, 800,000 are of Palestinian origin. The other 200,000 are from Bedouin tribes and from Circassian origin. So that you have the majority of King Hussein's subjects sympathetic in one degree or another with the Palestine Liberation Movement. King Hussein couldn't possibly control the activities of that movement in his country and remain 24 hours on the throne.
Well, Mr. Sinclair, we feel that this was perhaps a little hasty in making a decision to change the name of a street that's been dedicated for over 40 years. It seems to me that the street name that's named for an individual rather than just by number or by a general term has more significance than to just be changed overnight at the whim of either council or any commercial establishment, which may or may not be here in years to come. The original purpose being possibly, and I feel very strongly this way, to honor a person, to preserve the memory of this person, and we feel rather strongly that it not be changed at this time.